Now, I wonder if this has ever crossed your mind or come up in discussions or thoughts about, is your music commercial enough, or do you think it's too niche? And have you kind of struggled with, I don't know, maybe getting that balance, or even understanding if you need to try to find that balance? It's a really common question, having met with many artists over the years. And, especially today now, I think there's a lot more kind of pressure, or perceived pressure, or influence coming from various sources that says, you've got to get a chorus really quick, you've got to go straight into the hooky bits. And maybe sometimes, I don't know, maybe you think that might be compromising your artistic intention, which is a totally valid thing to consider. However, hopefully this will give you a few tips and ideas and thoughts about why it's important and how to strike that balance between accessibility and connectability of your music and the message and the art you want to create. And the reality is that commercial doesn't have to equal compromise. That's a really key point, because I think often that's what artists feel. If they make something commercial, what does commercial even mean? I mean, at its core, it means that it does business for you. But it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be mainstream pop. That doesn't mean commercial. So I think also reframing what you understand as commercial is really important. And that will help frame how maybe you pursuing your artistic intention doesn't mean you're compromising on being able to reach people. And truly, finding that balance leads to a sustainable career, and one that is satisfactory for you as well as an artist. So let's carry on through this video, and maybe I'll try and give you some pointers and some thoughts and some tips of how you might explore finding and arriving at that balance. So I want to start just reiterating that whole commercial, how we're going to define commercial. Commercial means, or should mean, could mean, probably should mean, accessibility. Is it the structure of your songs? Is it the lyrics? Is it the production, the polish, the flourish? Whatever it might be, or a combination of those things, that makes it accessible. Accessible just means that a group of people want to listen and engage with your music and your art. That's commercial. So we don't need to attach it to a specific genre or think about it being able to reach every single person on the planet. I mean, that's never realistic in any type of music, style of music. So commercial is just how accessible to your audience your music is. We'll hold that in one sphere of consideration for this video and how we progress. And the second sphere, if you will, is your creativity. By definition, that's unique. Even if you've used lots of other artists, writers, creatives as an inspiration palette, it's still your lived experience injecting within your creativity to produce something that is uniquely you. That could be your lyrical theme, that could be your sonic identity, that could be your lived experience. Again, we've talked about this sort of stuff in previous videos. But again, those two areas, don't think of it as a tug of war. Think of it as a blending, a coming together, a fruition, if you will, a fusion of those two elements that ultimately create artistically driven, authentic, connecting music. And I think that's what most artists want to achieve. So commercial, creativity, they're not going against each other. It's about exploring how you blend and bring them together. And truly, an audience who's getting to know you and becoming kind of into you, I think they're going to appreciate that authenticity. They're going to really delve in and connect with how honest that kind of tension or that exploration for you as an artist might be. So embrace it and don't think of it as a fight. Think of it as a coming together, of a collaboration of the two elements we've just talked about. So I think the really important part of that equation to start with is your creativity. And to help make sure that is front and centre of the blending of commercial and creativity, the first practical tip is write for yourself first. Be authentic and honest in all of the songwriting that you partake in and you explore. Often when artists have the thought to write something commercial, I mean, that's when it starts to go wrong, because you disconnect from what's authentic to you. You disconnect from your lived experience. You disconnect from being able to communicate your observations of the world, of people, of relationships, of politics, whatever it might be. So it really is important to put your creativity as the driving force behind that. This is the priority. Write what's in you. Write what you want to say. You don't need to think about, oh, is this going to be appealing to, in the UK, like a Radio 1 audience, which tends to be quite mainstream. Or, or is this going to really fit for a billboard audience? Don't worry about that. Just write what's in you. That's how you lock into authenticity, how you know you're saying something you want to say about the thing you want to say, and you're saying it in the manner that is you, your unique creativity. So start there. Don't cloud thoughts, judgments, experiences, experimentation with, is this going to fit something? Don't worry about that. Write your songs. That's the place to start. Now, when you've got a batch of songs, this isn't dissimilar to a previous video that we've done about exploring your artistic identity and your sonic identity and building a body of work. So go and check that one out. There's good information there. But again, when you've got those authentic, honest songs, well, then you can think about, is it going to form a body of work, an EP, 4, 5, 6 tracks, something like that, and then what production elements are going to be in there. That's when you're kind of injecting your sonic identity, which can inform your brand. And again, we've done lots of information on branding. There's even a free download in the description you can kind of check out for if you want to kind of tease out what elements might be formative of your brand. That's really useful. But all of these things then start to kind of feed further into your authenticity. But at this stage, you are allowed a little bit of consideration of, is the production going to be speaking to the audience of which I know my songs connect with? Like, you can start thinking about that a little bit more. So again, that can be quite strategic. It doesn't have to be forced. It doesn't have to be overtly framed in, I must make mainstream music. No. This is where you can add to the connectivity of your songs, how they might relate to people, how they might draw people in sonically to kind of really hook them in and start listening. That's the kind of commercial sphere that you can start to think through when you start building out the production, the sonic identity. So again, all of this is feeding into your honesty, your authenticity, your truth as an artist. And of course, with things like social media, there's nothing to stop you, I guess, activating your audience a little bit and start testing a bit of material. Just see what starts to resonate. Again, this is just information that you're gathering. You shouldn't use it purely to decide what to release, when to release, what style I should do it in, what production choices I should make to make it commercial. No. But they're really useful platforms and tools to kind of test a little bit what's going on. And that hopefully will help inform and be part of the equation of your choices of where you want to take your music, at least how it's recorded and how it's built with production. Another really useful thing to do, and do it at this stage or before the previous stage about production, so it's up to you. There's no rules to kind of how this might fit for you. Explore other artists who you think are in your kind of your peers, your sphere of where you're making music, and dig a bit deep. Find out, like, are they consistently making the same sounding music? Is it really connecting with their fan base or their audience, if they're still kind of building that fan base on that journey? And I think that can be incredibly useful, because you can also then kind of identify where there might have been a bit of experimentation. I mean, for example, and you could take this, you might release your body of work that has that coherent sonic identity, that has that commercial sphere that's blended with your authenticity of songwriting. You can release that. But sometimes you can tease that. You don't have to release it on Spotify and DSPs. Like, you can test some other music, the more experimental music, and see how that starts resonating with your audience. So again, like it also opens up a little bit of a door to your growing audience into who you are as an artist, into some of your methodology, into some of your thought processes, and that can strengthen and compound why people, part of your audience, are starting to really resonate with you and kind of, champion you and get into you as an artist. So that research, that exploration, and that having a slightly analytical approach, why are they doing that? How have they done that? I noticed they do this. That can be really useful and really helpful to start informing what you might try out in your campaigns. And just mentioning campaigns, release campaigns there, sometimes it can be useful. Let's say you've got a 6 or 7 track kind of EP, and there may be 2 or 3 on there that don't lend themselves so obviously as a single. Well, that's fine, because you could release the 4 or 5 tracks as singles that really kind of hammer home your sonic identity, your artistic identity, your authenticity, your voice, all that kind of stuff. And those other tracks you can do, I guess, a bit of a passive and softer release, so they can still be out in the public as part of an EP. They might not have been a lead or part of your lead singles, but you can still examine how they perform. And, if that experimentation is really important to you as an artist and you feel it's part of your artistry, well, it's still present there, but strategically, perhaps you haven't chosen to slightly muddy the waters a touch. If you're releasing quite strong sonic coherent songs as part of that release strategy, and then you suddenly drop a really experimental one and kind of champion that and put a campaign of activity around it, well, that sometimes, particularly for new artists or emerging artists, that can really knock the audience a little bit. They're like, hold on, I know who this artist was, or who were they were showing me who they were, and this has just thrown me off. That can be quite a brutal step to some audience who are starting to engage with you. So you don't have to shout about every single piece of music you release in the same way. Perhaps that experimental one, perhaps you can be quite consciously passive with it and just notice if some audience are starting to pick up and say, oh God, what was this song? I really like this song. Again, that's like you're still being authentic and true to your artist intention, and you're still showing a little bit about your experimentation elements of your artist proposition, of your artistic intention. So that can be quite an interesting way of still speaking truth, staying true to what you want to do, who you are as an artist and your intention, but without really kind of getting in the way of the strategy of building a growing audience that you are turning into a fan base. And I think finally, I just want to reiterate the value of almost every single song you ever write. And perhaps we'll focus on the experimental ones that maybe don't fit that sonic identity that across a body of work. With your commercial, working with creativity, that balance. Maybe these ones are slightly outliers. You never know, further down the line, that there might be a hunger for a small collection of those more experimental tunes. They might actually come across as like B-sides perhaps. And of course, social media is just a vastness of being able to share stuff at different times in your journey. So it's important to never think about your experimentation as wasteful or pointless or not worth investing your time and creative energy in. Not at all. They will become useful at some point, I guarantee it. I mean, even in publishing deals, like it's never a bad thing if a publisher's starting to show interest to you and they ask, what's your back catalogue? And you say, well, I've got, 150 tunes here, but I've got 350 of these experimental ones. Well, that's going to be interesting to a publisher because they might be able to kind of pitch to other artists. They might be able to talk to you about building different strategic elements of approach, such as sync. That could fit a soundtrack. You never know. So nothing's ever wasted. But again, just to bring it home, be authentic with your creativity first, and then you can consider the commercial element and how you blend that and fuse it. Don't make them fight. You don't need to.